I figure that the better your mood is, the more things you'll tell me. I have an ulterior
but
motive.
I know. Never mind. Just ask your dumb questions.
So you told, after I left yesterday, you told my dad to tell me to ask you about rummage sales.
Oh, that.
Tell me
Okay.
about rummage sales.
Well, I don't know if they still have them, and if they do, they probably use a different name. But a rummage sale was where everybody contributed old clothing, for instance, or even new clothing, things that you couldn't use anymore. Sometimes even dishes and pots and pans, but it was mostly a clothing sale. And they'd have them downtown. Some of the other churches had them. The Lions Club, anybody would have a rummage sale, and you just give them all your junk. And it was good junk for the most part. And you'd go to the rummage sale, and I used to go and buy, for instance, a beautiful winter dress that must have cost somebody in those days $20, and take it home and make it over into something. And everybody went to the rummage sales except the very haughty and rich, of which we didn't have many in my little hometown. But everybody used the rummage sale. They were very common. And nobody put you down because you wore a rummage sale dress. But I got an awful lot of my clothing there because we were very poor. And my father was a skilled carpenter, but there was a period during the Depression when all building, I think I've told you this before, came to a halt. And so there was very little building to be done until Roosevelt
WPA.
was elected and he set up the WPA. You've already got that on there, I'll bet you.
I've got that on there. So, you know, when you, let me read this chart here. When you described your father, you always mentioned what a good carpenter he was. Did you ever see him work?
Oh, yes.
So you would go hang out with him?
Oh, LeGrand's a small town, and you're always around, and he built a lot of things within our sight or within our vicinity, and yeah, we just knew what he was doing and saw him do a lot of it, as a matter of course. Not that we followed him around or anything like that.
You just go and pop in and say hi,
Yeah. Or take his lunch or whatever. Yeah, that was common to anybody who was that type of laborer, outdoors and building, that sort of thing. Everybody knew everybody, you know.
Did he ever not get paid for a job?
Did he ever what?
Not receive his pay for a job that he
did?
did?
No, he was always paid.
And was he always paid in money? Or, you know, did people say, oh...
Oh, unless he made a deal with somebody. For instance, we had a friend, and I think Dad did some work for him. And he loaned us, he had a plot of ground. Have I told you this?
Mm-mm.
Had a plot of ground about 3 miles out.
Oh,
of
the garden.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you did tell me about that.
He loaned us a piece of land, so I won't
So that was
really-
a trade?
No, I'm not sure that it
Oh,
was,
okay.
but they were friends, and my father had probably helped him with something or done something for him, because that's the way things went in those days. You didn't make contracts so much as you just traded off. You know.
So then you've told me about your dad and his beautiful baritone voice.
Had a gorgeous voice.
And after I left yesterday, you told my dad that your father had received an offer to go with some actors.
With a traveling group, and one on their itinerary was a trip to South America. And his father would not permit him to go. I mean, a good Mormon doesn't go around with a troupe of actors, and don't you forget it. And that was part of the thinking of the day, you know, actors. Honey, I mean, you could be in this ward play, but that's not the same thing. But to travel around and earn money acting, some of those people drank, you know.
So how old was your father when he received that offer?
Well, it must have been in his teens and maybe his 20s. I've forgotten how old he was when he married my mother, but it was in the later years. It wasn't when he was a kid. He was in his...
But he wasn't married yet?
No,
Okay.
not at that time.
So he was single, eligible, single
And
male.
my father was a very good-looking man, too. I have to dig out some pictures, see if I can find some pictures.
Did you bring any pictures?
Bring any?
Yeah, with you?
No, I haven't been home since I saw you.
Well, I meant, did you bring any with you when my dad brought you up? Next time, I have to bring some
I
pictures.
can't remember whether, no, I didn't.
Because I would like to
You took my suitcase home.
Yes, I'm still, no, I still have it. I'm still going through the papers. I can't go through all the papers in one night.
Would you have to read them all? I hope you don't find any.
Well, I thought that's why you gave it to me.
I
to
didn't-
read them.
I didn't know you were going to peruse every word.
I want to make sure I don't miss anything good, Grandma.
Well, there's not much good in there, is there? Have you found anything interesting?
I found a sheet of paper that you had, I should have brought it with me. You had written down where you were living when Pearl Harbor was bombed.
Oh, where was I?
I should have brought it with me, but you named the city.
Was it Boise, Idaho?
I don't think so. I think it was something else. It started with an L. Maybe it was a street that I'm thinking of.
Well, L is La Grande, Oregon.
It's something, I know it looked Grand Oregon starts with an L, Grandma.
I can't think of any other place I've lived that started with L.
I'm trying to think. Tell me about, I found another paper. It talked.
Wait a minute, it was Salt Lake City.
Was it?
I had moved to Salt Lake City and I had, I worked a night shift somewhere. And I got up and came out of I slept late and got up and came out on Sunday morning and somebody told me, that's when I heard that Pearl Harbor was bombed.
So someone told you.
Mm-hmm.
And then did you turn the radio on or did you just?
Mm-hmm. We read the newspaper and we learned the radio, but in those days, radios were a little more scarce.
Mm-hmm.
But I lived up in a little apartment on Wall Street, which
Yeah,
is
you
up
told me that.
which is up above the Capitol somewhere
Yeah.
in that area.
Oh, I had a question. Forgot it. So before I came, you were telling my parents about how you would make popcorn balls and sell them at the theater. Tell me about that.
Well, I was a good cook even as a girl, and I can't remember. Oh, I worked and babysat for the people who ran the theater. And I can't even remember their names.
What theater? Oh,
In
the
La
theater that you
Grande,
sold.
Oregon.
The theater that you sold the pop. Okay, so you're in La Grande.
That's
Okay.
the name of one of the theaters was the Liberty, and the other I think was the Granada theaters. And I made popcorn balls at their home for their kids, and right away he hired me to make some. He sold them in the lobby of the theater. They usually in theaters in those days, and maybe they still do, I don't know, they had a candy counter.
Mm-hmm.
And they sold my popcorn balls and just sugared popcorn, you know.
Yeah, they still have it. In fact, I think you spend more money on the popcorn and candy than you do on the ticket.
Really?
Yeah.
I ought to do some more of that. Anyway, that's what he liked. I was a good cook,
Yeah.
so he hired me to do that. I can't even remember how much they paid me or how much it cost to buy some of that. All that stuff's out of my mind. I have never poked my mind full of frivolous things that I didn't need, if you will, but, you know, that I thought, yeah, that's how that happened.
I've never heard that before. So tell me about some stories of you being a mom to two young kids. You know, maybe they were, you know, give me some dirt on my dad. Maybe when he's not here. Tomorrow.
He was one of the sweetest babies I have ever known in my life. Both of them were. Both David and Diana were good children. Never had any problems with them. They had an ordinary amount of colic and that sort of thing, but they were good, bright. They were both very bright. In fact, I think that's a characteristic that most of the children of all of our families carry. You know, kind of alert and interested and observant and not just babies, you know.
I was looking through those papers and you had kind of a timeline you had some dates and you had, you know, specific things that happened at these dates, and one of the things that you mentioned on your timeline was that Dee Dee was sick, and she had an operation, but it was when she was younger.
Oh, no, I'll have to recall that. I can't remember her age, but it seems to me 14 runs in my
Okay.
mind. And she had what they thought was, oh, it's gone. One of those diseases that sort of runs in families or is inherited, or, and she didn't. But anyway, we doctored her for that. And apparently there was nothing, and I think I had a sneak blessing given to her. But what was it we thought she had? It's gone out of my mind.
But do you remember being worried about her at all?
Oh, yeah.
Or
Yeah. For a while, whatever it was, we thought she might not make it.
she was that sick?
She wasn't down in bed sick. It was just one of those things that, like tuberculosis. It wasn't
Okay.
that, but the same sort of thing. Something you have that wipes you out eventually. And I can't even remember now. That's part of my state of being. I don't cling to things that are past and done and don't do anybody any good.
Well, they do me good. I like to hear the stories.
I know, but I'm at the time.
Got
you
it.
know. But I remember that, but we were very worried about her. What the heck was it we thought she had?
Ellen, didn't she have an adrenal gland and kidney removed?
Something of that nature, but I still can't recall the name.
So they removed one of her kidneys?
I'd forgotten that, you know it.
And some adrenal glands.
And she was a beautiful child, Dee Dee was, and a darling little girl. And now that he's gone, I'll tell you, that was one of the sweetest little boys that ever lived. He was cute as a button, and everybody adored him, including his father.
Can you tell me, like, any stories about that?
I grew up as the oldest girl in a large family, and childhood stories come and go to me. And I don't really, at this point in my life at least, I don't really recall them. But David was and did all the things a good little boy does. You know, including some of the
Naughty things
ones you
boys
paddle
do.
their bottoms for.
What about Dee Dee?
She was the same way. We were just normal children. Both were good looking, both were well behaved, and scared to death. I know they weren't scared of their dad, but he was gone a lot, so I raised them. More or less, you know.
My dad used to tell me a story about living with Dee Dee and you when he was little, and Grandma Allie. He talks about, you know, the stove and heating the house, and how was it, I mean, what was that like living with your mom and your kids?
Wonderful, very normal and ordinary. When you come from a large family, as you'll remember when you look back, everything is normal, so you just do it and forget it. I mean, that's the way life is, you know.
Makes sense.
So it's kind of hard for me to recall anything special, except that Dee Dee and Davy were both good children, and good, and for the most part, very healthy, easy to take care of. And of course, a lot of that time I was away working because their father was elsewhere, drinking. You knew that he was an alcoholic.
I knew he was an alcoholic. My dad told me once, I don't know how old he said he was.
Well, I think we have some handsome missionaries.